we're working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Welcome to ASEAN in Focus Weekend Edition. I'm your host, Dr. Kaloy Tabunda from the Development Academy of the Philippines. The Philippine elections on May 19 is a very crucial event. The next Philippine president steering the country in this era of the ASEAN community. The elections would cover posts in both the executive and legislative branches of government. The most powerful posts of president and vice president will be voted for, with the winners serving one 6-year term. Also up for grabs are 12 seats, or half of the Senate, all gubernatorial posts, all mayors, all city and municipal councils, and of course, all the Congress people. On May 9 and the period after that, the world will focus on this Southeast Asian country, and the next president's move would be under a microscope. Today, in ASEAN in Focus Weekend Edition, we are honored to have as guests two prominent figures in the scene of political analysis. Pareho nating suki sa programang ito, former Philippine Ambassador Jose V. Romero Jr., PhD, Chairman and President of the Philippine Council for Foreign Relations and the ASEAN Center for Study of Democracy, and University of the Philippines Professor Dr. Aris Arugay, who is at the same time Executive Director of the Institute for Strategic and Development Studies. Welcome to the program, doctors.
Thanks for having us,
Doc. Salamat sa pagpapaunlak niyo sa amin sa programang ito muli. First question, in terms of what are at stake for this country at the moment, how different is these elections from the previous ones? We discuss first the economy. How is this different from the previous elections in terms of where the Philippines economically is, where is at now?
Well, there's a lot of, the stakes are high for this election. We're talking about a presidency that needs to either continue what has been started by previous administrations, or maybe you might want to have a presidency that will steer new paths, new approaches to solving economic problems. According to surveys, Filipino voters, really for them what matters are economic issues, yung tinatawag nating gut issues or material issues like jobs, poverty, making sure that economic growth is inclusive, making sure that we have a clear policy on labor, for our OFWs or migrant workers. So there's a lot of issues economic-wise, but this election will determine whether it will be more of a matter of continuity or change.
Ambassador Romero.
I go for change. Because continuity means this usual top-down type of development paradigm, meaning to say you can have high growth rates and a high level of poverty. That's what we're seeing today. I'd like to see more of a bottom-up approach to development.
So a growth that is more inclusive.
More inclusive, yes, more participatory, and more attention to the lower income groups.
Because for the past several years, we have been one of the fastest growing economies in the world. And you want this changed or continue or what?
The growth has been limited to OFW remittances, to be very honest about it. Because, I mean, if you look at the GNP as comprising of 3 sectors of the economy, like manufacturing, agriculture, and services sector. Actually, the growth will be coming from the service sector. Agriculture is a negative growth. Industrial growth has been just been very, very modest to modest. So we have not really maximized the opportunities in the economy.
So growth has actually been more on the service sector, not in the economic, not in the agricultural or manufacturing sector.
In fact, let me just characterize this as it's a tripod.
Tripod.
That is balancing on one leg, which is remittances.
Okay, Dr. Aris.
Right. And we must understand that remittances are individual, uncoordinated decisions by overseas Filipinos,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Until now, we treat our OFWs as bagong bayani or heroes, but we seldom see actual policies taking care of their welfare. We often hear horror stories about the plight of our OFWs abroad. I think the new administration will really need to walk the walk, and let's talk about just championing this idea of that they're heroes and that we owe a lot to them, but really putting flesh into making sure that they are really well taken care of, that their interests are protected, not as OFWs, but as citizens.
Citizens of this
As
country.
citizens of this country. But just going back to what the ambassador said, a lot of the growth that the Philippines experience is because of what we would say sound macroeconomic fundamentals.
Yes.
And I would and economists have said that macroeconomic fundamentals are not subject to change that quickly, meaning you need to have a stable policy environment. And some would even say that this has already been set up by not this administration, but by the previous administration. And it just so happens that the present administration is reaping the benefits
yes.
of sound
Yeah.
macroeconomic,
Yeah.
monetary and fiscal policy that was set up even before.
Ambassador, he was part of the previous administration.
Yeah, I would say that characterizing the macroeconomic policies today as sound would be quite generous, perhaps too generous, you know.
Okay.
Because I'd like to think that, for example, the fiscal situation, we have the most regressive tax system in the world, you know, where all the payments, the tax payments are made by people, the middle income groups, the employed,
Such as
et
Dr.
cetera.
Aris Aruga and I.
Yeah, yeah.
We're subject to 32%
32%.
And then,
withholding tax automatically.
when it talks to, we have the very low savings rate
Right.
here because of the income maldistribution. We're not collecting taxes. Our tax take is what, about one of the lowest in the region. So I cannot honestly talk about sound macroeconomic policies. But it's better than we've had in the past. But I would not characterize the policies of the past as good.
But of course, we would agree that the growth path should continue, which we are having right now. But the growth has to be more inclusive. It should include the sectors that have been neglected through the years. Because right now, you're saying that the growth has been concentrated with the service sector and, of course, the contributions of the OFWs. But of course, we see that their benefits are not really being taken care of. Their welfare are not really being taken care of.
You cannot talk about development without developing industry,
Yes.
without
yes.
developing agriculture. Otherwise, it's ampaw.
Okay. Okay, so that's one, but that's for the economy. How about at this point in our history, the South China Sea issue is very hot. So, what do we need to see
You
in the
just
next
come from
administration?
China, so you have to share.
Well, the world is watching, not just our neighbors, but the entire world, because not only is there there are domestic issues at stake. We're currently in a very turbulent environment. Our neighborhood is not as peaceful as it was maybe a decade or 2 decades ago. While they say that the 21st century is an Asian century, there's also a lot of possible flashpoints. You mentioned the South China Sea, and you mentioned about this rivalry between China and the United States, and using Southeast Asia, using the Asia Pacific as one arena where they try to match one another in terms of hard power, soft power, etc. So I think, and everyone seems to make the case that whoever's going to be the new president could clearly or could have a different approach, a different strategy in terms of security policy, in terms of external relations, in terms of dealing with the South China Sea issue, in terms of dealing with China and with the United States. So that, I think, is the bigger game that is at play. So we might be too inward looking, but whoever wins will have to face all of these challenges.
Ambassador, you just gave a lecture a few days ago on the Philippines and China Sea relations. So what can you say about this issue?
First of all, there are two truths that is beginning to, well, cannot truth be unfold. I mean, I'm mixing my metaphors, but the fact is, China is going to be the biggest economy in the world.
Okay,
In
few
the
years from
next,
now.
maybe it's a couple of decades. Then, of course, the U.S. will continue to be the top military nation in the world. So these are two considerations.
But isn't China catching up?
China, I don't think they can catch up in the next till the next century. There's
Okay.
just so much that the U.S. Firepower has, cyberspace, etc. But then, anyway, we have to realize you've just come from China, both of you gentlemen, and you know that this is a paranoia that's turned to aggression.
Yes.
The Obama pivot has created.
2012, right?
Yeah, to 2012,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
And remember that the Obama pivot was immediately followed up by the snatching of reefs and islets because they wanted to reach a sort of a strategic stalemate in the sea. So that is the thing. Now, that crisis has to be managed. We were collateral damage of this because of this superpower thing in China Sea, you know. Okay, so I think the best thing to do is to really sit down and said, look, this can't go on because today we have moved away from hegemony and imperialism to neo-colonialism. Now, neo-colonialism doesn't mean to say grabbing territory. It means it's no longer gunboat diplomacy. It's what I call containerized diplomacy. So gunboats has been replaced by container ships, moving cargo from one port to the other. And that's where China's competitive advantage will be, especially if they began to think the Silk Road, maritime Silk Road,
Right.
and all right. So it would be very stupid, actually, if I may use the term, you know, for China to spoil what's already thought. So I think that even after the arbitral decision, that they are willing to sit down and talk sense about this thing. So it's a win-win situation.
Okay, so the great challenge will be for the next administration on how to proceed with our relationship with China. Okay, when we come back, we will talk of other issues that makes these elections so much different from the previous ones. We will be back.